This is We Burlesque.
Hi, this is Reign Supreme.
Hi, I'm Shimmy LaRue.
This is Newfoundland.
Hi, this is Joshua Dean.
Hi, this is Miss Brawling Beauty, and you are listening to We Burlesque Podcast Season 7.
It's so fascinating. Every once in a while, I'll get someone. Let's see, who was the last one who did like they put on like this Shimmy LaRue. She put on like this great this is Shimmy LaRue, and you're listening.
I love it. I can see Shimmy. Shimmy's got a radio voice.
Yes.
I don't have a radio voice. Shimmy has a radio voice.
Well, that's the thing, is that we work in a visual medium so often, so it's
Thank God.
understandable. But here I am bucking the system, trying to get everybody to talk. This is We Burlesque, the podcast. I'm your host, Viktor Devon, and through the miracle of fiber optics, I get to talk to fabulous individuals in the field of nightlife, specifically burlesque. And today, I get to talk to Desiré D'Amour. Hello.
I'm sorry. I'm just going to make a slight correction, and everybody does it. It's D'Amour.
D'Amour? What did I say?
D'Amour. You said D'Amour?
Oh, I apologize.
Yes. No worries. People do, and Samsonite has been scolding me that I should correct people so that my name is said correctly. I've never been the person who cares. I'm like, it looks like people are saying it. People will get it. I've never been bothered by it. But years ago, Kate Valentine pronounced it wrong for a whole year. And when I told her, she was so mad at me that I let her do that for a year. And she says, it's not about you. It's about the person too who's doing it. They want to know. And so I'm trying to lean into that.
Well, through the miracle of fiber optics, I'm talking to Desiré D'Amour. I thank you for that. I think what it is that apostrophe, I think, tricked me up. That's all.
Yeah. Whenever I talk to newbies, I always tell them, don't put weird things in your name like apostrophes and foreign symbols, because most fonts won't take it. So when somebody's making a poster for a show, they're going to hate you. And then it makes it hard for people to pronounce it. And sometimes us Americans don't use foreign symbols right. And so when we do put them on our names, it doesn't actually have the effect we think it's supposed to have. And then foreign let us know that. And so I'm like, I wish I had not bothered with it to begin with.
Oh, no, it's fine. Well, that's the thing is, who was I talking? I was talking to Suk Creme, who has multiple accents in her name. And we were at an event together some time ago. And I didn't recognize, because I learned apostrophe. I learned accent marks from the musical Les Miserables. That was the first time as a child I had ever seen accent marks, because I grew up in Connecticut, which was very white, so we didn't use a lot. And that she indicated to me that the way that the accents, they were either backwards or in the wrong place, it completely changed the pronunciation of her name. And I don't remember what it was, but it was evidently it was confounding. That leads me to my first question. Are you named after the musical piece, or where does Desiré D'Amour come from?
No. It's kind of a silly. The original name that I first started burlesque with was Rita Cancino, which is Rita Hayworth's birth name. Rita Hayworth is just my greatest hero, and my first act I put together was a Rita Hayworth tribute. And somebody gave me the advice that I didn't want to get pigeonholed into always doing Rita Hayworth stuff for the rest of my career. And in retrospect, I probably could have, worked around that or whatever, but it prompted me to change my name. And the suggestion was change it to something that isn't tied to any one thing, so you can use it, so it's an evergreen name. and I wish I had known Indigo Blue that early in my career because, she always wore blue and with her name. And I wish I had done something more, interesting like that. But I wanted um, both names to start with a D for Double D. I used to be bigger bodied and bigger breasted for sure. And so I wanted the Double D. I thought that was funny. And I wanted it to be French to as a nod to my Creole heritage that at that time I was really kind of digging into. And I wanted it to say, love, but also that people wanted me. And so desire and D'Amour just kind of were two words. I was like, oh, I like desire and I like D'Amour. And but I didn't want to be called Desire. So I put the little accent to make it Desiree. And so it's kind of desire of love or Desiree. So yeah, it was just me. And we didn't really have the internet very much back then. The internet was that whole dial-up slow thing.
Oh, I
So it
know.
was a lot of looking in my husband's like French textbooks from high school and stuff. And I had some drag friends and some drag queen. They weren't necessarily my drag mothers because I didn't know enough then to try to make that happen. But some of my drag queen friends, we batted around some names. And when I said Desiree D'Amour and Double D's, they were like, "Oh, we love that. We love that. Yeah, we're going to call you Double D and we're going to call you Dee Dee." And so, yeah, so I loved it. And now everybody just calls me Des, and I like it.
Did you know there was a musical composition by that name as well?
I knew that there was a song. I didn't know where that song came from, or so I didn't really know it came from a musical. Do you know?
It's classical music, actually. It's Saint-Saëns who did Danse Macabre
Oh, wow.
and the Carnival of Animals. So yeah, check it out. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that there's a movie with that name. There's I think it was a poem that and then the spellings are often slightly different. But there's certainly, and then there's another performer with that name, which has been a little bit of a thing over the years. But
They spell it exactly the same.
they add on an E
Okay.
after the E with the accent. They add on one more E. And it's a Canadian performer. So years ago, I had to reach out and kind of try to navigate that.
hmm
Which a lot of people had to navigate that.
Yeah.
It's amazing in a world of a bazillion names that we can come up with some of the same exact ones.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that you came up with the name pre-real Google search, because if you had ended up going with Rita Casino, you would have been fighting against the algorithm forever with Rita
Yes.
Hayworth. So
Yes, good point. Very good
yeah.
point. Yeah, that's such a good point that some of the things that now are either problems or solutions that we didn't know about back then could have changed things if we had done this or had done this differently. And I didn't even think about that, but that's such a good point. Such a good point.
You are, well, we'll get into your the involvement. Involvement seems like such a minuscule word for your participation in BHOF, but that has sort of been the connecting point to basically bring in all different regions and folks who wouldn't normally see each other or know each other. And without that, we would be even that much more separated from and disconnected from awareness of that.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even way back when it was still out in the desert, I mean, we had, there weren't as many people coming from other countries, although Erochica obviously came from Japan, and we had a couple of other people from Japan. But people were coming from as far away as Canada and New York, out to Barstow, California. And so even way back then, it was still the gathering spot, the conjoining, and we're lucky that it's just grown from that to where now people are coming from, New Caledonia. I still can't get over the people who travel 24 hours to get there.
I know. I thought Australia was significant.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people come from everywhere, and yeah, we wouldn't even know each other. Like, I mean, obviously we would have the internet and everything, and I think
Yeah.
now maybe, there's not a lot of silver linings from COVID, but maybe one silver lining is how we've all utilized Zoom and because body language and seeing people face to face, seeing people's faces while you talk is so important.
Hmm.
So at least we have that now. But I always wonder, if we didn't have a all these festivals where we can see each other, would we ever even know what other performers look like or seem like, or I just don't know what it would have, how the scene would have, the community would have grown if we didn't have festivals and the ability to come together for, several days at a time.
Hmm.
And then, of course, without Zoom, gosh, nothing would be happening.
Well, I used to do these
Yeah.
interviews. So when I was on the East Coast, the podcast began while I still had my regular show in New York. So I would do all of these in person. And
Oh,
then,
wow.
yeah, and it was a very different vibe. It was a very different, and not better or worse. It was just different. And usually there were people that I had either had a chance to know through being in their shows, or they had been in my shows. And then when the husband got the job in Southern California, I was like, all right, well, let's see how we do this. And I tried internet phone, and it was interesting. And then with the just the ubiquity of Zoom conversations, it feels like I wonder if Google is like kicking themselves for dropping Hangouts so quickly, because they really could have had the curve on that.
Yeah, we used to do Google Hangouts a lot. The Beehoff staff, that's how we would communicate with each other
Mhm.
because, we're all in different places. And I love that. And I taught some classes during COVID over Hangouts. And yeah, I mean, obviously Zoom and what's the other? Microsoft Teams. I do a lot of that in
Mm,
business life. But yeah, I'm surprised Google did not step up more um, with the online meeting platform, because it's just, I mean, from family to friends to business to burlesque, I've been on Zooms. I attended my aunt died of COVID. I attended her funeral via Zoom. Um, and it's not real life, but thank God that there was Zoom, then I could attend her funeral that way. So
yeah.
I don't know. Zoom knew what they were doing, I guess.
They somehow beat out even Skype. I remember I met my husband. Well, I didn't meet my husband on Skype, but it facilitated our first major conversations because we didn't live in proximity for a long time. And I forget that Skype was such a thing.
I, you
Considering
know,
again that doo-doo-doo-doo, that sound, I remember that.
yes, yeah. Until you just said it, I literally had forgotten about Skype. And
Yeah,
yeah, wow.
I guess they're still around.
I think I've seen. I don't even know.
I don't
I don't
even
even
know.
know.
Folks, write in. Let me know. Are you feeling Skype still? Are you still using Skype?
Make a
Um,
Skype come back.
let's go way before all of this technology and the
Okay.
and the stuff. Where does your story begin?
Oh, um, I guess, I mean, really technically it begins in a strip club. When I moved to San Francisco, as a teenager, I became a stripper basically right away. A friend of a girlfriend of my boyfriend's friend was a stripper and told me all about it. She worked at the Lusty Lady, and it's a great way to make money. And I'm an exhibitionist by nature and not shy at all, obviously. And I was a poor mixed race girl trying to make it in the big city, and hearing that I could make hundreds of dollars a day, maybe even thousands on the weekend. I was like, I'm in, I'm down. And I guess I'm just not shy or whatever, because I never had any issues with like taking my clothes off and being completely nude in front of people. So I was doing that, and then stripping led to a lot of bad things for me personally. It's not for everyone. It was for me for a while, and then I became a drug addict. I ended up being assaulted in my club and had my teeth knocked out of my mouth by a drunk customer. So and then also just the whole scene kind of changed. We weren't making the money we used to make.
Hmm. Run about what year was this?
So when I stopped stripping, it was 98,
Okay.
97, 98, end of 97. And I started in 91, 92.
Oh wow. That's a long
Um,
tenure though. That's a long
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's about 5 years. I always say it's about 5 years. So I think I started, early 92 and stopped in late 97. But sometimes I see something and I'm like, I think that song was released in 91. So maybe it was 91 and maybe, but that period. And I mostly worked at the Crazy Horse in San Francisco, but I also worked at the Century and um, won the contest at Mitchell Brothers a lot. But even if you win the contest, you're supposed to get a job there, but you can't if you have tattoos. So I could win the contest, but I couldn't work there. But so at least I performed on the Mitchell Brothers stage. So yes, I was at all the clubs, but Crazy Horse is where I did my longest tenure. And I became a feature dancer there. So when you're a feature, you have a half hour set. It's much like old burlesque. You have a half hour
Hmm.
set, you up there by yourself for a half hour entertaining. Obviously, we get totally nude in strip clubs in San Francisco, but it's still, I'd put together a story and each song would, you know, blend into the other and it was kind of early burlesquing, but I didn't really know it because I didn't know
Hmm.
anything about burlesque at that time. When I finally but and then while I was working there, um there was this woman who would come in and talk about this troupe she'd started called the Cantankerous Lollies and about their burlesque shows they were doing. And all of us girls that worked at the club were like, what is wrong with you? You're making $20 to go strip? Like, that's ridiculous. No, oh, like, you're insane. Something's wrong with you. And we just totally wrote her off. And that was Harvest Moon. Um,
Ah.
and so we kind of thought that she was just doing something silly. Like, why would you work for so little money? And we didn't really know what burlesque was. Um, and then by pure chance, at the same time, I ended up moving in with a roommate who had this book called This Was Burlesque. Um, and because Harvest had mentioned this burlesque word, I started reading this book and learning about what, old school burlesque was. And so I eventually went to one of her shows and it was cute and awesome and great. But again, I was in stripping for the money. So I didn't understand why I would ever do burlesque. Um, and eventually I stopped stripping and I think Harvest moved to New York by then or she just disappeared. Wasn't in touch with her anymore. And then one of my best friends, I'm a vintage girl. I was a pinup, I was a fetish model, modeled with Dita before Dita was even in burlesque. So people in my fetish and pinup world started joining troops, and my friend had joined a troop and was trying to get me to join it. And I was like, no, no, I'm done with stripping. I don't want to go back to the drug world. I don't want to get beat up again. She's like, it's not like that in burlesque, in the clubs we're at the bars and stuff we're in. And I was still like, no, I better not. And eventually I went and saw one of their shows, maybe a month later. And it was at this awesome it's called Bruno's in San Francisco. I don't even know if it's still there, but it was an old school, 50s, 60s nightclub. So cool. And they did the show with Fisherman's famous burlesque orchestra, live
Hmm.
band. And as a vintage girl, my heart just was a flutter. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. This is what I want to do. Um, and so then my whole nope, I can't started to change. And the next thing that happened was they were going to go to Teaserama and they were going to do these series of shows. And my friend was ill and she couldn't perform with them. And she and I are the same exact size. We're both short, same exact size. And she's like, "Can you please fill in for me? You can fit into my costume and everything." So I was like, "Okay, just this once." And I'm sure you can understand the rest of the story. Just that once became, I don't have your costume. No, I don't have anything to give back to you. I had she gave it to me. But I mean, to this day, I have her costume. Like I just took her place in the troupe, and she was a nurse and needed to focus on work, so it actually worked out because she wanted to leave the troupe. So I just took her place and never looked back. And that was Dane's Dames, one of the first troupes in San Francisco, and that was around 2000.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, and then after that, there was no getting me off the stage without a pry bar.
Where were you largely working? What was the city? Was it San
San
Francisco?
Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah, so San Francisco and LA. Most of the time San Francisco and LA. I did get to go out to New York a couple of times because I was taking a vacation there.
Mm.
So I got to perform at the Slipper Room, but mostly San Francisco, LA, a little bit in Seattle. Um, I think I did a show in San Diego back then, but it may not have been for a few more years. But in the beginning, we all just, wherever we could drive, none of us could afford to, we weren't making enough money to fly places. So if you happen to be going on vacation and there happened to be a show, then you might do it. But it was mostly the places you could drive. So I would drive it, 8 hours down to LA and do shows there.
Mm.
But San Francisco was definitely home base back then.
It's
And then
funny, growing up in New Jersey, I didn't have an awareness of the burlesque realm, as it were. I started in 2006. So while we did have the internet, it did not have the archive principle. I mean, Joe Booz was still working in the news groups, but these were a lot of names that I hadn't known. I'm still learning about the West Coast,
oh yeah.
thanks to folks like Lily Von Stupp, who actually at the last Hollywood Burlesque Festival brought out Audrey Deluxe and some of the people that had begun earlier, because I feel like a lot of West Coast is lost in a lot of it. Maybe it's just my own awareness of it, but a lot of the neo legends that I hear talk about, and the ones that I predominantly talk about because I've met them, are New York based, is how I think of them, as Julie Atlas Muse and Dirty Martini and Tigger and the neo legends, as it were. But you are a neo legend because you've put in your time, you've obviously done the facilitating, and I think that we need to celebrate that and recognize that it was all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, so I've started to do some of that work at BHoF. First, during VHoF, the 2 years that we were virtual, I did this as a side Zoom that you could participate in. And then the last 2 years that we've been back live, I've done it live as a kind of a sliding scale, give a donation kind of thing. It's a free, but it's called Ranch Undressing. And it has been focused on basically the first couple of years we focused on the mid 90s through probably 2002, 2003. And then we started focusing recently on 2004, 2005, 2006, when we came from Barstow out to Las Vegas. And so in that, I bring out all of my, what I call my yearbooks. We have all these, magazines and Michelle Baldwin's book that we all used to sign each other's book. So I bring all these things. I have photos of the old days, all these flyers, and then I have a slideshow of just photos of, and then I have video of the early competitions out in the desert, and also shows, I was part of Rock and Roll Strip Show, part of Lucha Vavoom in the very beginning, and so I have old videos of all of that, really grainy, horrible, recorded literally with a camcorder kind of stuff. I've been sharing that around and talking about, and the apex of that last year was Harvest Moon was given a Sassy Lassie, which is BHoF's award given to a community member who's, done something to drive burlesque over the years. And not only did we get to give her that award, but then she was my special guest at Ranch Undressing. Usually I have a panel, but last year I dedicated the whole time because Harvest is one of the very first. She started in, I think it was 1993, the Cantankerous Lollies started. But out here we had Velvet Hammer, we had Cantankerous Lollies, we had a few things going on. We have Kitten DeVille, Mimi Lemieux, Kitten on the Keys. So Kitten DeVille, Mimi Lemieux, Kitten on the Keys, and Rocky Roulette. They were all in Tournai, the burlesque movie that went to Cannes and won an award, and they walked the red carpet at Cannes. And that was years ago. And they're all West Coasters. So I think the West Coast is represented. But I think when you are in a region, you
Mm,
hear the most about your region.
sure.
And if you come to the West Coast, you hear about all these people that have been doing it forever out here. But when you're in Canada, or when you're on the East Coast, or when you're down in, Louisiana, Florida, Texas, or whatever, you may not hear about these people. So I'm glad that there's so many of us who are trying to get those names out there, especially
Hmm.
this sad period where, a lot of the legends are leaving us,
Hmm.
um, going to the big burlesque stage in the sky. And those of us who started in the 90s and early 2000s probably are going to be the next, group of people. I call this group icons. I think the legends deserve their own special title. Nobody will ever be what, Satan's Angel and Dixie Evans and Jenny Lee and Tura and Marenka. Nobody will ever be what they were again. They were some of the first. But I call this new group icons.
I love
And
it.
and I love that we're all like, people like you, people like Lily, um, Forza Nature. There's a handful, Bellison, of course, who are out there making sure people know who these people are, so we don't lose that history.
Mm.
And I can't wait to engage with more of you to. I- I've got a lot of ideas about things we could do at Beehoff to start, archiving this.
Hmm.
Because even if we're talking about it to people right now, what about people in 50 years? What about people in 100 years? I want them to know. I want your podcast to be recorded somewhere, and when someone digs up that capsule underneath the museum, they,
I mean, that's the dream, isn't it? To live on in to be remembered and
to
to
remember.
have made a difference in some regard. I mean, they say it very plainly in Paris is Burning. Like it's if you shoot an arrow real high, hooray for you. But if you have the chance to make an impact, then you are a legend. You are an icon. You are remembered. I do love it though. I think I asked last person I asked was Brawling Beauty, another one who began in the
Mhm.
90s in the strip scene and then moved into burlesque. Although incorporated burlesque in the strip scene as well. Uh, what we should call y'all. I love it. Icon. That's all right. I'll take it.
Yeah, that's what I've been pushing for at Beehoff. I mean, obviously, it's not my decision alone, but that's what I've been pushing for. I think icons of, burlesque is a great way to put it, because to me, with the legend name, it's those original people who did it for a career in its original setting, and I
Hmm.
think that's the big difference. I think icons could be, you know, from my generation on, we can call them icons forever. But I don't personally feel comfortable calling anybody else a legend, because there's something really special about being the originator of something.
Mm.
And I think that needs its special place. And then
Sure.
everybody who took that and then, did their own thing to it. There's definitely some original things that the neo scene has done, but it was originated, those women and men and non-binary folk paved the road way well before we were born, and that is just a special thing that I don't ever want to take away from them.
Yeah.
But then icons of burlesque, and I also think that one thing that we try to do at Beehoff that I don't think is done enough is celebrating people who may not be on the stage but are adjacent to it, whether that's production, whether it's, like I think of Don Spiro and Penny Starr Jr., who were great, recorders, both on still film and moving film of everything. And if it weren't for them, I wouldn't have known what people look like, or any,
Hmm.
and people who are just huge supporters of burlesque, like someone like Front Row
Or
Paul, who,
Paul.
yeah, just like, I don't even know, he's in a category of his own, just like promoting it constantly, um, in all sorts of ways. And so I think that we also need to start giving some icon status to people who may not be, strutting across that stage, but the rest of us wouldn't be strutting across it if it weren't for them.
It's the facilitators. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. That's a great way. The facilitators of burlesque. I love that.
Hey there, this is Viktor Devon, and I don't actually want to talk to you about Green Chef. I don't really want to talk about mattresses or Squarespace or even BetterHelp, and I'm sure they're all great, but I would really prefer not to tack on ads for these and other companies in the middle of Season 7, WeBurlesque podcast episodes, or any of the other series that appear on the network. You can help me out by avoiding doing that by throwing a few dollars to the Patreon or via Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App via the links in this description. It'll really help me out. I am abundantly grateful to our current Patreon subscribers. That would be Curly Bright, Bella LeBlanc, Oliver Swisky, Bear Anatomy, Sebastian Crane, Logan Laveau, Joyce Phipps, Andrea Barra, Alex Kolod, Will Britches, Amy Blair, Stormageddon, Emma Story, Rex Halligan, Lori, Miss Brawling Beauty, and Jacourtney. Thank you so much. You can also find us at patreon.com/WeBurlesque or go to the show notes and find any of the methods to pay me digitally. Thank you so much.
I think that we're a generation that recognizes that acknowledging and shining a light on people is important to them and to us. You know, it makes me feel better when I can shine a light on someone and say, look at what they did. So I think that we're going to do maybe a little bit better at recording the history and giving the kudos and all of that.
It's also just getting it out there, because anyone can have a vault, and I know that so much is recorded and so much is kept. I obviously, having been at Beehive only twice, I saw a great deal of recording, either through Matt Finish, just making sure that everyone saw what was going on in Instagram Lives and things like that, as well as the panels that were being preserved. I really hope that as one of the still remaining mysterious nightlife arts, burlesque maintains almost invisibility. Yes, we see it in a Hollywood sense, where usually actually it's actors who are playing burlesque people that we then recognize. Like Marilyn Monroe was not a burlesque performer. Betty Grable was not a burlesque performer. But
Ellie, not a burlesque performer.
Who was that? I'm sorry, say it again.
Sally Field was not a burlesque performer. Yeah.
No. Christina Aguilera, not a burlesque performer, but thanks
Not
for
a
trying,
burlesque
girl.
performer.
Thanks for
I
trying.
love me some Christina, but she's not a burlesque performer.
And but even that has like a very specific agenda, because it's a film and filmmakers have agendas, and they have, there's from script to casting. There was apparently supposed to be a much more drag influence in the film that got cut, and things like that in the movie Burlesque.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, evidently, like the Alan Cumming character was written as, depending on one's perspective, a potentially not great progressive iteration of a trans person. However, they were supposed to be, like the big flouncy, flamboyant, character, and they rewrote it and all of that. So I'm hoping that as burlesque keeps getting more and more traction, even if it's not necessarily in the packaging that all of us appreciate, that at the very least then it's as accessible via search, via website, via access in some capacity. And it's certainly been one of the driving forces of me keeping this podcast alive, besides the fact that I get to talk to my friends.
But I love it.
So let's talk about the ranch. This is the famous goat ranch.
Yes.
Break it down for the uninitiated, please.
Oh man. Yeah, it's so funny because the first time I went out there, I just had zero clue what it would come to mean. So it's, but you drive to Hellendale, which is outside of Barstow. And anybody who doesn't live on the West Coast probably doesn't even know where Barstow is, but Barstow is smack dab in the middle of the desert, desertiest desert of California. People wouldn't believe that it's part of California because they think, sunny shores and all that, but there's this nasty desert in the middle of California that is hot and dusty. I live in the desert in Tucson. It's lush and beautiful here. It's still a desert, but we got green trees and plants and water.
It's because you're like us at Riverside, you're Mediterranean.
Yeah, yeah. We're the high desert, so we actually get water. This desert was dusty and gross. And Hellendale was this tiny town. It had one restaurant. It's a Mexican restaurant. That's it. One restaurant. And like two or three, hotels, not the necessarily rent by the hour hotels, but motor lodges, like below Motel 6. And so you would, and those were in Barstow. So you'd stay in Barstow in these like hotels, and you drive over to Hellendale each day. The festivities would start on Friday with just everybody kind of hanging out at the ranch around the pool, but no show or anything. And then Saturday was the competition. And when I first started going out there in 2000, whoever showed up and signed up was in the competition. And the top competition would start around noon, and it would go all the way up until midnight because you got dozens of performers. And it was basically, this ranch. It was started by Jenny Lee. Jenny Lee was a original, burlesque performer, a very smart woman who realized that men were making all the money in burlesque and running things. So she saved her money, and she eventually bought her own club called the Sassy Lassie, which is in San Pedro, California. My husband was born and raised in San Pedro, so I always tell him that we were meant to be together because the Sassy Lassie, B-Hop's origin spot, was right next to my husband's origin spot. The two most important things in my world were born right next to each other, maybe even in the same year, right? So
well,
Jenny,
and for folks who don't know, we need a visual of Jenny Lee. There's a very famous portrait of her with her fabulous headdress, topless, with her breasts on the table next to, I think, like a bowl of soup or a teacup or something.
Jenny, my signature move is really Jenny's signature move, my backbend. Jenny is, I love her. She is my hero. I never got to meet her. She unfortunately died of breast cancer before I ever stepped foot on the ranch. But Jenny took the money that she made in burlesque, saved it up, bought her own club, bought another club, and then saved money from those businesses and bought this huge goat ranch, this huge piece of property out in Barstow. And her idea was to make it a retirement spot for all the other burlesque strippers because, they didn't have retirement back then.
Right.
Like
their version of like the Hollywood what was it? Oh, forget, like the Hollywood rest homes, basically,
yeah,
where the old actors would have a place
exactly.
to stay and be with themselves. Okay.
Exactly. So she put a couple trailers out there. There was the house and a couple trailers, and at the same time, she had this collection of burlesque memorabilia that she was housing there. And so she and her husband moved out there, Charlie, and then Dixie Evans came out there. Dixie was one of the first to take her up on the retirement spot offer. So Dixie moved out there, and Dixie and Jenny were great friends. And unfortunately, Jenny passed and left the property to Charlie and Dixie. I don't know if it was equally or what, but they were, her best friend and her husband were kind of co-owners now. And so Dixie and Charlie stayed living out there, and Dixie kept building the museum up. And I don't know that Jenny saw it as a museum the way that Dixie's vision was. Dixie was like, I'm gonna have everything in here. And so they kept the museum going, and Madonna went to the museum on her tour, took her whole tour of us out there. But it was so far away from, it's close to Route 66, but you really had to know something to know about the Burlesque Hall of Fame. Then it was called Exotic World. And so not very many people visited Exotic World. It certainly wasn't getting the footsteps that it should. So then Dixie came up with this idea to have the reunion and pageant. And well, the reunion came first. She wanted to get all her old stripper friends out there. That was, her and Jenny's plan all along. But then after some time, she thought up the pageant as an attraction, as a way to get more people to come out there. So she started the pageant, the competition part. And that was before the neo scene really popped up. So the first people who competed were strippers, but eventually the pageant started to draw those of us from the neo scene there. And what you would do to go to Exotic World, to go to the museum, is you'd drive out to Hellendale, drive down this dusty road, come to this great gate entrance, one of those arch, you usually see them at ranches. Mm-hmm. And this was a ranch, but instead of saying like Double K Ranch or whatever, it said Exotic World. And you would pull up to the gate underneath this arch and you'd honk and honk twice. And sometimes you had to honk multiple times, but eventually Dixie would drive out there and let you in. And then you drive down this big, long driveway that curved around and pull up in front of the museum. And again, just this dusty, goat farm in the middle of the desert. And then the competition, there's a pool out there in between some of the houses and outbuildings. And there's a pool. And at the end of the pool was a stage. And the stage had a runway that came straight out to the pool, to where you could literally jump off the end of the stage into the pool. And that's where we would compete, on the stage at the end of a pool. And people would sit in chairs along the side of the pool under some awnings. And some people would sit in the pool and watch. And then some people would sit on the grass, or grass as we call it. But there were no seats. It was not a theater by any means. It was just somebody's backyard, really. The museum was in what essentially would be a barn, or, like a shed or something. These were just outbuildings, and they had become decrepit over time. That was part of the reason for the move to Las Vegas, was things were being damaged, things that we cannot ever replace. But the ranch was just this dusty, their home that had all this amazing burlesque memorabilia. And then when you're in the competition out there back then, I have this great picture of me sitting next to DeMilo. And what happened immediately after this picture was taken is I admitted to DeMilo that I was about to enter the stocking peel contest, but I didn't really know how to peel stockings. Like, I was like, you just take them off, right? And she's like, oh, girl. DeMilo the legend turns to me and spends the next 10 minutes showing me how to do a stocking peel in a sexy way. And so the next picture I have is me in the, my leg all the way up in the air, parallel to my face, me peeling my stocking off the way that DeMilo had just taught me. I got lessons from legends on the spot during the competition. The ranch was a magical place where you just, I'm in a dressing room. Tempest Storm is over there. DeMilo's right next to me. Dixie Evans is wandering around. But then, Kitten DeVille is here, and Joe Weldon is here, and Indigo Blue's over there, and here comes Dirty Martini. It was like everybody who we think are icons and legends now, we were all there together, just exchanging information and, sharing a water bottle and sharing whatever booze we had snuck in. Dixie did not allow cussing or booze.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, that's another thing about the ranch that's a little bit different from the Orleans and Las Vegas. No cussing, no booze. And no showers, and you just got dusty and disgusting and gross out there. Everybody was sweaty and dirty. It was some form of glamour. But it was very magical because of everybody that was out there, and we didn't really realize we were creating, if I'm honest, we used to always say, like, I wonder when this is going to be over. I mean, I was part of the swing scene, swing dancing scene, and that kind of got really popular. And then there was a Gap commercial, and then it died. People still swing dance, but it's not like it used to be. So
And
we
then there was a Gap commercial and it died.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the commercial killed it.
Well, you know, yeah.
The Gap gets involved. Look, if Gap starts making burlesque underwear, I actually have a pair of underwear from the Gap that I turned into a costume. But if the Gap starts making costumes for burlesque, we're probably on our way out.
Oh dear.
But yeah, so we thought burlesque was going to die any day now. I mean, we were always just in fear of like, when's it going to be over? When's this magical ride going to crash and burn? The fact that it has gotten bigger instead is, we just back then sitting next to Milo that day, if you would have told me this, you would have told me about today, I don't think I would have believed you at all. I just couldn't imagine it really becoming something that so many people embraced and loved, because then there was like 300 of us nationwide, you know?
Yeah. Well, do
So
you
that
think technology aided that? Since like we started talking about that, do you think that that was one of the major components?
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we started with our little Yahoo groups and Friends
Uh,
and MySpace. Um, the people that I was meeting out at the ranch, and then you know, when I'd go to LA and somebody happened to be in town in LA, those people, the only way I was able to keep in touch with them was, you know, writing letters, of course, but we all got a little bit lazy by then about writing whole ass letters.
you have to get to a mailbox, you gotta get a
Yeah,
stamp. I
a
know.
stamp. I can't find my stamps. Where are they? But yeah, we would like message each other on Yahoo and Friendster and stuff. I mean, if it weren't for those platforms, if it weren't for the internet at all, again, it took forever for it to actually connect, and then you'd get kicked off, and you know, but if it weren't for that, I don't know that we would all know each other and that it
Mm,
would have grown, because then you did start taking trips to other cities just to go do a show. You know, you're like, well, hey, I got some vacation time coming up. I can afford a plane ticket if I make a vacation out of this. I've always wanted to go to St. Louis. So I'm going to St. Louis. I'm going to do all the touristy stuff and I'm going to do a show. That only happened because we were all talking to each other through these platforms and starting to connect. But also a huge part of it was definitely not just the ranch and Exotic World and the Miss Exotic World pageant, which has now become Beehoff.
mhm.
Wasn't just that, but Teaserama, you know, the first Teaserama in New Orleans in 2001, I think that was. The New York Burlesque Festival started not too long after that.
Mhm.
And then Twirly Girl, Indigo's pasty, you know, my first pair of pasties that twirled were from Twirly Girl. Indigo had twirlygirl.net. She had her own like web page. And we were like, oh my gosh, this is like a business and a web page. Indigo kind of showed us all that, you know, she and Baby Doe starting Teaserama, like these women were showing us that this could have legs. It could walk and it could keep walking into the future. And so I think between technology and other people really starting to like plant their feet in it and spread it out, that's what really kind of made us all like stick to it and then start traveling and then start commingling. And then Kate Valentine created Vava Voom Room and on the West Coast in what 2003, 2004. And once Kate brought Vava Voom from New York to the West Coast, so there was the East Coast going on simultaneously as the West Coast, and
Mhm.
all these headliners started coming out to headline Vava Voom West. I mean, that was just kind of, then it just exploded. You know, everybody realized like this is a real thing, and we're really going to do this. And
Yeah.
you know, start buying your plane tickets, get your bus loaded up, whatever. We're going to take this all over and we're all going to know each other and we're all going to work together. So I think there were a lot of components, but technology was like the string that held all the big chunks of fabric together.
Mm. And of course, it required a lot of people um, using it to perpetuate that motion, basically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were working in these shows, I find that a lot of burlesque is very insular and regional, and even though we do have the web and we do have these festivals, that I think a lot of burlesque is in front of a lot of other burlesque performers because it's one of the most inviting of the nightlife arts to bring in people who do it and like watching it at the same time. That and drag. You'll see a lot of drag queens at drag shows. You'll see a lot of burlesque performers at burlesque shows that they're not in because these are their friends, these are their colleagues and such. In terms, and so far, when it comes to the retrospective on Exotic World and to Beehoff, it's community oriented. What was the actual non-performing audience membership like? Who were you performing in front of?
Yeah, I mean, even still now, like here in Tucson, our audiences are not a lot of performers, but it's a lot of friends of performers for sure. But back then in San Francisco, I think our audiences, there were some performers in the audience, but there were so few of us performing, honestly, that most of us were on the stage. I mean, our shows used to go on really long. But a lot of it was other performers, not burlesque performers. So musicians, pinup models, fetish models, and people who performed at dungeons and shows around San Francisco. We had a lot of people who were in the nightlife world, in the gig economy, and those were a lot of the people who would turn up. And so it was still not mainstream audiences. It was not mainstream audiences. And I like invited my work friends to come, and they came once or twice, but it really wasn't it wasn't their jam. A lot of people don't understand, when people think of stripping, they think of strip clubs. I had this group of work friends. We used to go to the Hustler Club for dinner. Like we'd go to the Hustler Club for drinks and dinner all the time. And, there'd be naked women running around on the bottom floor. And if you're on the upper floors, they could only be topless. But, and that wasn't a thing. That wasn't a problem. But when we went to burlesque shows, like they couldn't wrap their minds around that it's not today's version of stripping. It's some old schooly thing. And if you aren't into kind of vintage aesthetic and if you don't have an appreciation for what came before you, I don't think a lot of people got it and understood what's the point. If I want to see strippers, I'm going to go to strip club. Why would I go see?
Well, they'll be more social, probably. Frankly,
yeah.
There's a divide. I think there's a backstage real moment for a lot of burlesquers where they are on and then they go the fuck home.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's what has been in San Francisco when I started. After the show was over, we all kept partying. We went to the after hours clubs. We went to the drag show that was still going on. We all hung out and kept partying. I mean, that's also maybe just a city thing. I don't know, but we just kept going. When I moved to Tucson and I was in my first burlesque shows and everybody went home afterwards, I was like, where's everybody going? Aren't we going out dancing? Wait, okay. It was shocking to me. And that still persists to this day. I'm always the one at festivals who's like, okay, who's coming with me? Yeah. And there's 4 others and everybody else back to the hotel. I don't know why. And I'm 50 years old. I'm like, if I can do it, you can do it.
The weight of capitalism is heavy and deep. Sometimes you got to go home for that 8 o'clock shift. It's just too much sometimes.
You're right. And as I get older, I am struggling with, I'm glad our shows are on Friday night and I can tell you, but yeah, so our crowd had always just been like other people in the performance nightlife world, and it was never a mainstream crowd. I see more of that today. I see like, regular people. We've got some regular customers that come to our monthly show here in Tucson who are just really, an ex-cop, he's retired now, and his wife was some sort of office administrator. We've got, just regular people coming and appreciating it. So I think it's definitely grown in the audience that it attracts. And it's something we talk about a lot at the museum, because the museum isn't just for performers. It's for anybody to have a love of burlesque. We want everybody to love burlesque. But you're right that we are a very insular community in general. Even if you get out of your region, still you're going to be around a lot of people who are burlesque or burlesque adjacent, but I think it's changing. I think it's,
Mm.
and I hear burlesque that they're going to redo the movie.
They're making it
And
a stage show.
oh, is it a state? Okay, somebody
It's
told me that
supposed
they're
to be a
doing a new
stage
movie.
show. No,
Okay.
as I understand it, Christina is working to do a West End production of it.
Okay. Okay. Well, that doesn't fit my narrative as much now because I was thinking, well, the good thing if they do another movie could be that it could drum up interest again and
Sure.
maybe people will come to a real burlesque
Well, now
show.
they'll do a movie version of the musical. They'll do
Oh, that's right. That's how that works. That's so right, right? Like hairspray. Oh my God.
that.
You're so right. Okay, we hold out for that and then our crowds are really going to pick up.
I'm hoping because especially if it starts in London, I have a feeling it'll be allowed to be a little grittier. I've always said the film itself, I cannot believe that that's the first script. I have to believe that it was way grittier, grimier, or what have you, or at the very least more burlesque show oriented, frankly, because it's
Yeah.
basically a romantic comedy, or a romantic coming of age story. It's a Star is Born. And that's why I don't even like when people say, oh, it's just cabaret. Like, it's not even cabaret, it's a Star is Born.
Cabaret.
It's a
Yeah.
Star is Born.
Yeah.
It's a Star is
Yeah.
Born.
It's
But the oh, and I was going to say, I never went dancing after my get-togethers, but coming from New Jersey, which is diner culture incorporated, we would all go together because I come from Rocky Horror. Audience at home, take a shot. I mentioned Rocky Horror. We would all go to the diner afterwards, and that is
yeah.
a Rocky Horror tradition. Some people went to Denny's, some people went to IHOP. We were in New Jersey, so we actually had proper 24-hour diners
Diners. Yep.
with the
That
disco
was
fries if we wanted them.
well,
So
see,
that not being a regular thing is strange to me because because White Elephant, my group, we would go to the diner after the show.
I love it. That is that if you didn't go on to any other party or event or dance or whatever in San Francisco, then you would go to Baghdad Cafe, which was our 24-hour diner.
Mm.
And yeah, that's and same thing, like it started with Rocky Horror, and then as people moved into burlesque and people moved into other, performances, that is another thing. And I will say that is the thing that we do here in Tucson. If we are going to get together after a show and hang out, it's to go eat at one
Yeah.
of the couple of late night eating spots. And I'm for that. What I did love about all the Zooms, including your own award shows, I love that we would then hang out afterwards on the Zoom and talk
Yeah.
because I think that's more most people's pace. Like those of us who like to go out and be social can sit in front of the computer, and people who don't like to leave their home, which the another silver lining of COVID was that a lot of people who for physical or mental or both health reasons don't don't leave the house at all or often got the opportunity to be part of nightlife through Zoom.
Mm.
And so I love that after a lot of shows during COVID, a lot of these Zoom shows that we'd all stay and hang out, chatting.
Mm.
It that reinvigorated my love for the burlesque community in ways that I can't express. Seeing all these new faces and talking to people and keeping the energy going after the show was over was really it reminded me of the when I first started burlesque, how I felt, when we would go out afterwards and hang out together at clubs or the cafe. So that was really cool. COVID was a terrible time in so many ways, but there were little slivers of gold in there like that.
The creatives and the sex workers will find a way. Without us and the adjacent quantities, technology would not even be what it is now.
You're so truer words were never spoken. And man, I've never thought of it that way, but that is one of the wisest things I've ever heard someone say, because that is so true. And a creative sex work will just get out of the way. Just move out the way.
Yeah. When did you get into more of an administrative side when it came to the Burlesque Hall of Fame? Was that after it moved to Vegas?
Yeah. when it first moved to Vegas, I had been, out at the ranch volunteering meant you swept. Whatever it was, you were sweeping something because it was just dusty out there. You were the pool volunteer or the, vending room volunteer or the museum volunteer, but whatever it was, you were just sweeping dust with the broom. So I'd volunteered out there in that level, that capacity. But when we came to Las Vegas, there started to be, the last year in Barstow, when they built the Holiday Inn, was the first year we had a Legends night. So Friday became an actual show night. So when it moved to Vegas the next year, there was a lot to do to make sure that the Legends show was set up. We did that, the world's longest boa world record thing. So there was a lot of volunteering to do with that. And we started to, at those first couple years, we started to have the Legends escorts. And I got the absolute honor job of being Tura Satana's escort and Tiffany Carter's escort. So I was volunteering at the escort level and then helping unravel the boa for the, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then, and then a few years in 2009-ish, I was asked to come be part of the more executive staff, so to speak. I'm a CPA by trade, and I was asked to come be more of the business part of things then. And then there was a shakeup in leadership, and a year or two later, Joyce Tang and Dustin Wax came into the fold. Dustin as the executive director of the museum, and Joyce as the executive producer of the Weekender. And when Joyce and Dustin became the team that has lasted the longest, they asked me to be their finance person and the third member of the executive team. And the three of us were together for, I think, a decade. Joyce left in 2022. But we were together for about a decade, the longest of any production team. So 10 years of being on the administrative side. And it was just, like a lot of things, I just was there volunteering for anything. I would do anything, always offering my services, always available. I've been going, 23 years I've been going to the thing. So I knew a lot of stuff about it and remembered things that had happened. Oh, I know where that's at. They always put it here, that kind of stuff. So I just kind of, when Mig Ponce and Brett Rollins took over production for a year, the two of them asked me to come work with them. And then, so each team just kind of brought me further into the fold until Joyce and Dustin finally asked me to be part of the executive team. And then after I was part of the executive team for a couple of years, I was asked to join the board of the museum, which I'm now chair of. So it just kind of, you can't get rid of me, so you might as well use me.
What is the board? What is the function of the board?
So the function of the board is just like any nonprofit board. Nonprofit boards are tasked with governance, which basically means overseeing management. So Dustin is management, that the CEO, the executive director, whatever you want to call it, them and their staff are management. They manage the day-to-day operations of the nonprofit, which in our case is a museum. Yeah. The board governs that, meaning that, Dustin does the day-to-day stuff, but when he's looking for high-level strategy, where do we want to be in 5 years? Which markets do we want to start to target? Should we take a stance on this or, not? Those kind of things often come to a board to decide and to back. Boards are responsible for fundraising. You're supposed to, you either give your time, treasure, or talent, and you get others to give their time, treasure, or talent. We're a very small organization. BHOF is only about a $300,000 to $400,000 a year organization. The nonprofits that I've ran as a CFO have been 60 million, 14 million, million, but BHOF is 300,000 to 400,000. Right. So we're very small. We have
probably more fun though.
Oh, way more. And so, it's like burlesque is embedded in my DNA. My mom and my brother and my husband are at every show. They're at every BHOF. My mom makes my costumes with me. it's my life.
Mm.
Whereas the other nonprofits I work for, I may very much value the cause, but it's nothing like being part of BHOF. So even though we're tiny, we're mighty. And so the board doesn't have maybe as many responsibilities as a board of a bigger nonprofit does, but really just kind of setting the course and helping make sure the ship stays on it. And we are technically Dustin's bosses, but it's really a I'd say a parallel relationship. We really work together side by side, trying to help make sure that he can do the things day to day that he needs to do to keep the museum going. It's not very glamorous. A lot of people think they want to be on the board because they think that means something about being at the Weekender,
Sure.
and they
Prestige.
yeah. But it's we meet every other month for 2 hours over Zoom, and we talk about sometimes really about policies, writing handbooks, employee handbooks, and collection policies. We have to fill out our tax return, even though even though our income is not taxable, you still have to fill out a giant tax return.
Especially because it's probably
exactly. So it's really boring stuff sometimes. It's not glamorous. It's not fun. When we get on our Zoom meetings as a board, even though many of us are performers, rarely is any of us wearing makeup or wigs or costumes. We all just look like we just woke up, because we probably did. And it's not very glamorous work. But it's meaningful, important. The Weekender is a ton of fun and ever so important and fantastic and all that. But the museum is really what I'm here for. It's always been my the museum is how we're going to keep everybody's legacy, that's how we're going to keep burlesque alive, like we were talking earlier, for future generations, for years to come. The way that we're all going to be known or heard of is through the museum and its archives, and it's for all of us, and so it's just so important. So being on the board, even though it can be boring and thankless, it means a lot.
This is Viktor Devon, and it is time for you to submit your video for consideration. The Silver Tusk Awards is presenting a brand new category for 2024, Favorite Video Performance. You can submit a finished burlesque video of any style, any type, whether it's a one-take wonder, whether it's edited up, if it's music video style, whatever. It can be a freshly made video, or updated from a previous one, and it can even be a video made from the before times, during lockdown, or whatever. You send it to us, and it will go on the ballot for Favorite Video Performance. The finals not only will be featured during the show and be voted on for the final winner, but each of them will get $125 for the broadcast rights. Go to silvertuskawards.com for more information and to fill out the form. Thanks! Yeah, I think it needs to have, I know bureaucracy is troublesome goose, but I feel like it legitimizes what we do as performers to say, no, this is actually a job. Because the concept of, we're seeing it now with writer strikes and with conversations about AI, this belief that entertainment is linked with frivolity and therefore disposability is awful. We have entire cultures built on people just doing theater, and we now live in this hellscape. Like, where did we lose the plot? And I feel like as long as we're in, again, one of the major reasons that this podcast and one of the reasons that I talk to people and want to amplify and am so passionate. Like I will. The reason the podcast is just because I don't shut the fuck up about burlesque. It's my favorite thing in the world. It's all that I do, and I have a lot of thoughts on it, and I want to hear a lot of other people's thoughts on it, and I want to argue with people. Uh, but that's the thing is like I'm so exhausted by the concept of disposability when it comes to art, entertainment, and not even like art that needs to last forever. Of the moment art is very important.
Yes, yes, yes to all of that. I, oh, you make such great points, I don't even know how to respond to that because it's a sad, unfortunate thought, and unfortunately, it's true as well. And I think to add to that, the performance, the art that gets disposed of is local, authentic, genuine art. And so, when we speak of AI, yeah, the exact opposite of that. One thing I love about a local burlesque show, Beehoff is obviously stunning and amazing and the top of the tops and the most theatrical and the lights and the everything and blah, blah, blah. But I still go to local shows just to watch because there's something about the connection. That person is so close, you can almost touch them. You can hear their facial expression. I like to say, they're so close, I can hear their facial expression. At Beehoff, even though I'm near, like I can see far away, but I can't see that far away sometimes. I can't always see people's face, but in a local show, you're usually close enough to see a person's face and to hear their expressions. And that's like magic, just the chills and the hair standing up and all that stuff. And local art, local performance, just like local businesses, are never valued enough. And I don't know why. It's the people who do value it just have my heart because this is the way that we bring communities together. This is the way that at the end of the day, someone's had a hard day at work, which is most days for most people. They come to our show and we're doing something silly, or we're doing something beautiful, or we're doing something witty, or we're doing something that harkens back to their favorite cartoon character, or whatever it is. You just made their day better. They're having fun now. They've forgotten how crappy work was this morning, and they're just enjoying themselves and being taken away. It's therapy, it's medicine, it's non-alcoholic alcohol, it's non-caloric food. It feeds your soul, it feeds your spirit. It does so much for a community to have local performance, whether that's burlesque or whether it's local theater or whether it's, my husband and I are going to a jazz show tonight of a local jazz musician that we just love. Like, this stuff is so important to a society. And you touched on it. Societies used to be based on this stuff. This is where everybody used to come together. They would go to the plays. They would go to, okay, so the gladiator shows, maybe that's not the best thing.
The
but
Globe. How about the Globe? We'll say the Globe.
the Globe brought people together. It's why Shakespeare is so famous. And we're losing art in our current culture, and we're losing our love for art, and we're losing our understanding about how important art is. When they say that art doesn't need to be taught in schools because it's not important, oh boy, you don't know what damage you're doing to people's souls if you're not bringing them art. And burlesque is an art form. And I'm mentoring a performer right now, and the other evening she was here and just explaining why certain things that we were doing would work and why certain things we were doing wouldn't work, and realizing the depth of it. And she was like, oh, because if I do that, it'll connect with the audience member. And I was like, yeah, exactly. Like, it's not just we get up there and take our clothes off and do some little dance. Like, there's such meaning and investment and a story that is told up there. And I just hope people start to realize that more.
Yeah. It's I hope people start prioritizing that a bit more. Yeah.
That's the right, you got it. That's the right words. I hope people start prioritizing that more.
And what's so funny is that we're having this conversation after lockdown. after where we talked about how Zoom brought people together, so did Netflix, so did all of these streaming services, and all of these people are now with the WGA strike, I believe, has come to terms. I know the SAG-AFTRA strike is still, as of the time of this recording, still fighting the good fight. And I mean, I married a socialist, so I've learned a whole shit ton about workers' rights. So and seizing the means of operation. And I think that if we, maybe it's because everything is so, for lack of a better word, accessible, or at the very least, we feel more entitled to that accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
So like and some of it is, the problem is because it is corporate minded. No, I don't really. Yes, I want people to get paid more at their funds, but I don't really want to give the money to Netflix.
Yeah.
Because they're raising their prices because they have to pay more people. I'm like, I actually think that they have a good enough nest egg where they wouldn't need to do that.
Yeah. Yes,
and I see through that. Like, and that's what frustrates me, is it's not like, oh well, we have to raise our prices so we can pay people more. No. That's actually not true.
You just have to take a little less profit and pay people right. Yeah,
because it's an investment. It's not even like, it's just so frustrating. I get attached to TV shows knowing full well that they may not last another season, and then I'm like, and that's gone forever. Like, and that's just gone forever. And it drives me crazy, particularly because we're at a precipice where marginalized folks are getting those shows and then have to fight even harder to get that second, third season.
Right. That's a very good point. We are making some headway, and if we don't make enough, it's like you'll slip back in. It's like when you're trying to pull the thread through the needle head, and you just get a little bit of it through. If you don't pull enough through, as soon as you let go, it slips back out.
Yeah, or it's gonna. And then it's going to get that feathery thing. You can't get it back in.
Yes.
You can't get back in. As someone who has been doing burlesque, 25 years? Just 23. About? 23?
Yep.
Almost
coming up on 24, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's outstanding, for one thing. How have you seen the world of inclusion and diversity and such? How's it going?
So, it's funny. It like a lot of things in life, it's come a long way and it hasn't moved at all. I mean, I always feel like if I said to Martin Luther King Jr. that we haven't gotten anywhere, how would he feel about that? Because I obviously live a much better life than what he was living when he was alive. I live in a home with my white husband. My black and white parents weren't allowed to get a hotel room together, nonetheless live together. So clearly we've come a long way. And in some people's perspectives, or if you're talking about some specific thing like that, like the fact that my parents couldn't sleep together, but I could sleep with my husband, we've come really far. But then people still get literally lynched these days. So we haven't gone anywhere. So it's like most things in life, it's ebbs and flows, and you've taken a bazillion steps forward, but in other places you've taken a bazillion steps back. And I think that's true in burlesque. When I first started, it really, a lot of the people, not all, but a lot of the people that were that were in the neo scene had some touch in the vintage pinup fetish world, which is stereotypically been a place that white people exist in. So I was a pinup model and I was a fetish model, and most of my colleagues were white. I was very, on one of my applications to Miss Exotic World, when it says what makes you unique, I said I'm the only solo Black performer applying, because back then I could say that. There was truth, but there wasn't a solo Black person. So this all came from a white person's world, so to speak. And so in the very beginning, we were all dancing to, classic 40s, 50s, 60s songs. We were all emulating pinup beauty. And even I bought into that. And when I came to Tucson, I helped start the first troupe in Tucson. Tucson didn't have local burlesque. Burlesque troupes came through on tour. I had been here on tour a couple times, but we didn't have our own troupe. So I helped start the first troupe, Black Cherry Burlesque. And I quit the troupe and I quit teaching for a while for a very specific, there was a few reasons I left the troupe, but on top of it, the reason I stopped teaching was because the gals were coming up to me, and they were mostly white, but still they're coming up to me with these songs they want to dance to. And I'm like, oh, no, that's not burlesque. I was very much gatekeeping the classic, pretty 1950s pinup-y version of burlesque because that's all I had known. And they're coming to me with songs off the radio. I'm like, no, that song's on the radio today. You can't dance to that, you know? And they were like, this thing isn't fun anymore. And, you know, down here in Tucson, this isn't a very wealthy place, you know? So you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it for the joy. And here I am crushing their joy. Like, you can't dance to that song. And you need, you know, more hair and more makeup and more this and that.
Well, that may be true.
I was not wrong, but, and you know what stopped me in my tracks was somebody else said that to one of the girls, said what I was saying, and I saw it from somebody else. I saw somebody else saying it to them, and I was like, oh, that's so mean. You're crushing her. And I was like, oh, I've been doing that, you know? So I stepped back for a while because I was like, I need to learn. Teachers teach you however you learn, and they teach you whatever you're interested in. They you know, they are the originators of meet people where they are. They meet students where they are. Here I was trying to make everybody come to my side of the playground, and that's where I'll teach you, you know. And so the point of this long diatribe is that the roots of the neo scene came from that, where we all had to emulate these, you know, these white classic pinup-y 1950s women. Even though there were Black and Hispanic and Asian performers, most of what we were seeing and being fed were coming from the white performers. And they were very female forward, very busty and trim. There was just this image, and we were all trying to emulate it. We don't even know why, you know. And I still think that's a beautiful image. I love an hourglass figure, of course. But now, as I've grown as a person and especially as a performer, I love a lot of things. I love a not hourglass figure. I love a male figure. I love a female figure. I love a non-binary figure. I used to say, oh, I don't like this nerd less stuff. I now am working on my next nerd less act, you know. So there's been a ton of opening up. When people try to define what burlesque is, I shut them down. And I hate that we keep asking that question. Burlesque is basically burlesque is what the patron will pay for. If someone will pay to go to a show and this is what's going on, then it's burlesque. If somebody is putting it on the stage and someone else is coming to see it, it happened, regardless of whether you think it did or not. Burlesque just happened. There's obviously some, you know, there's usually some striptease involved. There's often some satire involved. But it's whatever you make it. And it's morphing and changing. And I hear about something, I'm like, how could that be burlesque? And then I see it and I'm like, I loved it. That's what matters. I loved what I just saw. If you would have told me that a woman could lay on the stage for 3 minutes and just peel off a stocking, especially if you would have told me, who didn't even know how to peel a stocking, that could happen and that she could win the competition, I would have said bullshit. You know, now I'm like, oh man, how long can if I pull mine off for 4.5 minutes, will I win next? You know, like
you'll get a cease and desist from Inga.
I have way too much respect for Inga to ever do that. But you know, the point is like it is,
because you know she'd come back the next year and do a 6-minute one.
But you know, so we've grown as a community, and so inclusion and accessibility have something to do with just even what styles can be presented, right? And we've come a long way with that. When it comes to the color of bodies, the size of bodies, the ability of bodies, the gender or non-gender of bodies, the sexuality of bodies, we still got a lot of work to do. We're still, you know, having the token this, and this. Even the token nerdlesque, you know, I'll have one funny act, but all the rest will be pretty. we still have a long ways to go. So it's come so very far from where I started. I've come so very far from where I've started, but there's still so very much further to go. We are not diverse. I see, at least 50% of every show is kind of the same act happening,
Hmm.
and when I see what is submitted to BHOF or what happens on the BHOF stage, there's still a lot of similarity. We have to open it up more. We have to say, you can dance to whatever song you want. It can be a black ass song and you should get up there and dance to it. It doesn't have to be, some classic, sexy burlesque song. It could be a rap song. I have an act, one of my favorite acts, thank you, Matt Finish, for letting me put it on the stage, to By the Time I Get to Arizona by Public Enemy. That is a very political, it's not a sexy song by any means. The beat isn't even like a great beat to get sexy to. It's a great beat to dance to, but not get sexy to. And I love that act, and it works. And, if we start encouraging other music, and if we, I saw someone do an act where there was no music. I've seen people do acts where there's no stripping. That used to be my biggest pet peeve. If you don't strip, it's not burlesque. By allowing more things to happen on the stage, we will, by nature, start seeing more cultures and more body types and more, so there's a long way to go, but let's not let go of how far we've come, because I don't want to let that thread slip back through the eye of the needle.
Right.
Let's keep pulling it. There has been movement. Something has popped through. Let's not deny that. Let's not criticize where we have gotten. Let's just talk about how to get further. We spend so much time criticizing where we're not. We could be using all that energy to get us there. I want to do more of that, more of getting us there. And that means not deciding what burlesque is, not saying what it is, but letting someone show you. I don't know. Let me see you up there. Maybe, this song that doesn't seem danceable, with this style of costume that doesn't seem interesting to look at, with this person who doesn't seem my version of attractive. Maybe when you put all those ingredients together and throw them on that stage, magic will happen, and it'll be the most interesting thing I've ever seen, and it'll be my favorite burlesque act ever. Like, we all need to be the person saying that, letting it happen. So yeah, diversity, inclusion, accessibility. We aren't there yet, but we're working on it.
We're in control of our own intersectionality. It's one of the few. We're not the MGM studios where somebody is in charge, and not telling Betty Davis what movies she can and cannot do. We're actually. It is interesting because again, and I don't want to take up way more of your time because you've been very gracious with it, and we're getting into more of like the complications when it comes to legitimizing what we do, and therefore, by virtue of incorporating things and making things the standard or homogenized or traditional, and therefore making everything else the other or what have you, because we're both grassroots and also 1099ers. Like, it's a real thing. Like, it's both a job and a passion. So it's hard. It really does get difficult because I as someone who finally moved to the West Coast and finally got to go to BHOF for the first time, didn't happen the year I was expecting to because everything shut down. But I went the next year, and I went the year after that, and I have a feeling I'll be going the next several years, because I really enjoy all of the hallway stuff. I enjoy all the panel stuff. I enjoy the shows. I see people that I am very lucky to both call a friend and a colleague and someone that I aspire to. I think we have the Royal Court this and last year that I was present to watch. My heart is full. And anyone who follows me know that I got really in my feelings when the royal court this year was challenged for any particular reason, because I had a lot to say about all of it, and I was really, really angry, that moments that, I don't know, give it a week. Literally, people have a week, and not even that, but also maybe keep things to yourself. Although, then again, sometimes it's very useful for people to say things because then you know where they stand. It's a frustrating element, and because burlesque is not perfect, we have we fight with racism, we fight with fat phobia, we fight with misogyny, we fight with ableism, predators in the scene, people who used to date, don't date, used to now are dating that person, they can't be in the same show. This person did something outside of the realm of burlesque that now makes them not a person that can be in this room. So it's really, I guess, it's not that far from MGM after all.
Yeah. Aren't you just writing Hollywood right now?
I mean, in a way, but at the very least, we get to help shape it, at least on the ground level and individual, because not even Broadway.
We have a voice.
Yeah,
we have a voice in this community, and like you're saying earlier, there's a handful of actors that have a voice in Hollywood because they've become so filthy rich, and they actually own a piece of it. But most actors don't get a say in their work, and I do think that in burlesque, not everybody feels that they have a say in burlesque, but way more people do in this community. Way more people do. And I don't even know if people realize how much, like at BHOF, we do really, people don't believe it, but we do really listen to what the community says and feels. We can't always take action on something because sometimes half the community feels this way and half the community feels that way, and they're both valid points. But this is a community where people really do have voice and can use it. But we live in such a world where you're told you don't, or you're shown that you don't, that I think some people don't realize that in this community they do and they could. So they don't try because they're just used to being rebuffed in the rest of life. So, if someone is hearing this and is that person, I implore you, I beg you, I challenge you, I champion you to use your voice, because this is really a community that listens to people and hears and sees. And we also listen to people, and we hear and we see. So, good or bad,
we talk.
Yeah. But it's still a grassroots community. It is still small enough. I mean, it was real small when I started, but we are still a smidgen. We're still a smidgen of the world, and small enough that the good part about that is that we can still, self-police to some extent, and, find ways to compromise and negotiate, and have a voice. And, Joe Weldon said something that, and you've been talking about it during this as well. And I think it's conversation that we need to start having more often about the legitimacy of burlesque, because we're such a smidgen on a big old planet. We do lack legitimacy. Joe said something to me, and I won't paraphrase it right, but said something along the lines of, like, people don't take us seriously. Adults don't take us seriously. I'm a 50-year-old woman, and I know that some of my colleagues, if I told them what I do on Friday nights, would laugh. They wouldn't take it seriously. They think it's a joke what we do. They don't legitimize our art form. And so knowing that that's out there, my God, I don't want to be fighting with each other. We have a way bigger fight, which is legitimizing our art form, taking our place in this world, and in our respective communities, and on the stages in our respective communities. And yet here we are still fighting each other over what your body shape should be, or what your, music should sound like. And it's like, we're ruining it for ourselves. That whole thing I said about thinking that burlesque would die someday. I mean, if it dies, it's because we all killed it through this infighting. And, there's not very many places left in this world where you can keep something alive or kill it. Most things are out of our control. The government, or Jeff Bezos, or, Walmart, are making all the decisions for us. But here's a place where we still have the ability to maybe to nurture it and keep it alive or to kill it. And I just hope people heed that call and like start being reasonable and inclusive and accepting, just accept that other people are who they are and that they're not you. And that's okay. That's okay. It's weird to me because my biggest gripe is that I'm not something else. I'm a pretty uh, I'm I believe I'm bisexual, but I've been married for a really long time to a male. So, whatever. I don't even know what to call myself anymore, but I'm pretty, cisgendered, generic kind of woman. And I'm like, I'm jealous that I am not less mainstream, like I look at the mainstream, it's boring. It makes me go out of my mind. So I don't understand how other people can be so against people who are different. When I see someone who's different than me, I'm just like, oh, you're different. That's so cool. I want to be you, like, and so it's really hard for me to understand where people are coming from. But it's obviously a fight we're in, that this othering of people and this keeping people out because they don't represent what you think this should be. That's the current theme as far as I can tell. And if we don't stop behaving that way, this scene is it's gonna cannibalize itself. And I still say scene. I'm such a 80s.
Oh no. I mean, I shout them out, a lot on this pod. But Pucks Aplenty gave me the three-way of industry, scene, and community as ways of identifying really what we're pointing at. And I absolutely I see where you're going with. I think that a lot of it is jealousy is a disease. Get well soon. And I think that your response to people saying you're so different, I wish I could be that, sometimes that's the same storyline that we're seeing in these negative responses. It's just that they're channeling it and translating it in such a nasty way that I don't think those roots are so far apart. Those roots are so far apart.
You're right. That is jealousy is wanting what somebody else has or is. Mm-hmm. And jealousy is ugly. And and I've learned, I used to be jealous when I first met my husband. We've been together 27 years now, right? So it's taken a long time, but I used to be very jealous. And I realized that was all about me, is my insecurity, my feeling that I wasn't enough. And I kept blaming him and I kept these other people, but it was all me and my illness and my discomfort and my mental, tricks my own mind was playing on me. And when I finally realized that, like, I'm either enough or I'm not, and the only thing I can do about that is keep being me and just keep moving, If I'm enough, then he'll always be here. And if I'm not enough, he'll go away, and good. Because and so I don't even know I don't think it was an epiphany. I think it was just a slow change over time. And the same thing happened to me in burlesque. And I talk about this a lot over the years, that, I came up with almost everybody that I was friends with and close to at the beginning of burlesque have one I was friends with Tigger, and was still Tigger, Dirty, Kitten DeVille, Era Chica. These are all people that I performed alongside, spent nights at their house or them at my house, or rode in cars with them, or, we had relationships, and they all won and I didn't. And there was this point where I realized, I'm a good performer. I may never be a fantastic performer. I may never be great. I may never be Hoff level. I can win it all. And at the same time, I was starting to do the behind the scenes stuff and really getting, a feeling of satisfaction and success out of, keeping the business in running. And this wave just came over me of being like, you know what? I'm enough as a performer. I may not win the title. I may not be as great as some of the people that I know and came up with. I can be happy for them and just be happy to be myself at the same time. I don't have to be jealous of their titles. And so there's a picture I show during Ranch Undressing. I've shown it all four of them. It's a picture of all of us on stage when Dirty Martini won.
Mm-hmm.
And it's beautiful because every single one of us is so authentically like cheering and excited. Most of us that are standing on that stage did not win, you know, and we were all like, oh. And back then, we were, even though we didn't get it, we were really, really happy for who did. The last year I competed, I was up against, amongst other people, Immodesty Blaze. We were both competing for Miss Exotic World. Immodesty was from England, you know, and she's there with her significant other who's male, and was not allowed into the dressing room. And she couldn't zip into her dress by herself. And so she was in the dressing room next door. She came into this dressing room. I'm starting to get ready. My friend had just finished sewing something onto me that had fallen off. And a couple other gals are there. And Immodesty says, I'm so sorry, you know, could someone help me? I can't zip in by myself. And my friend, who's there to do my fire safety, but, you know, has nothing to do with this moment, she says, oh, I can help you. So the two of them go off into the dressing room. And after they leave and the door shuts, these other gals are in the dressing room. One of them says, you know, aren't you worried? Are you really going to let her do that? I was like, what? And she said, are you going to let your friend go help her get in her costume? I was like, yeah, why? And she said, well, aren't you competing against each other? And I was like, if my friend zipping her into her costume is the reason I lose, I really need to rethink things. Like, I'm going to lose. She's not going to win, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like, it was, I was just like, that's fine. I hope my friend helps everybody get into their costumes, you know, like I couldn't even believe that. And that was when I was like, I'm done competing. We've gotten to the point where it's become, you know, showgirls style, marbles on the floor shit.
Yeah.
I'm done. And so it's just so interesting to be thinking about, you know, jealousy and how that presents, because I think that this is the one place where I've never been jealous. You know, in burlesque, I've always been so happy to be doing it. I've always felt so lucky to be doing it.
Yeah.
At all, that I've never been jealous or wanting to cut somebody else out or cut anything off anybody else or anything, you know. And when I see people win, I'm just happy for them. And you're right, that wanting to be more like somebody else, who doesn't want to be more like Samsonite and at the same time more like Margot, which would make you a very odd shaped person. You'd be sort of tall, sort of short.
We'd be a randomized sim. Yeah.
I always say if me and my husband had a baby, it would look like a troll doll with the orange hair and the brown skin because he's a redhead and I'm brown. I'm like, it'd be like that. But yeah, you know, who doesn't want to be Sam or Margot? Who doesn't want to flaunt their butthole like Randy? You know,
have the grace of Moscato. It's extraordinary.
I just want to have all the polys that Moscato has. Moscato and I are both poly collectors, and Moscato has some that I want. Who does not want to move on air? I mean, I don't know that Moscato is a creature of this earth because they move in a way that is just unearthly.
Ethereal.
Yeah, I can never say that word right.
Well, or Chris O, or any of the. I mean, that's that's why I also really love both the Legends Night and the Champion, and especially Movers and Shakers. It's because it's a greatest hits, and there will always be some songs that don't make the greatest hits that were like, well, really, come on, when is Madonna finally going to do Causing a Commotion? But we also have to then say, but there's so many. Yeah, it's a 3-album deal. And there's only so much.
There's something for everyone out there. That's what I learned stripping. Every girl at my club had a regular, no matter how you looked, we all had regulars, and we were a diverse body. There is somebody out there for everybody. And so that's why we need it. We need to please everybody that walks in that door, and we need it all, and it's fine to be jealous. I'm jealous of people all the time. I'm like, oh my God, I want that. Oh my gosh, I want to have that. Oh, I wish I was like that. It's fine to be jealous, but I guess I live in a happy jealous place of like, oh, I want that, and I'm so happy for you that you have it.
Yeah.
Instead of, I want that, and I'm going to hurt you for it. So you're right. Those things come from the same place. I've never made that connection before, but
I think one of the reasons is I'm catching up on another podcast. Reign Supreme, Gigi Holiday, and Poison Ivory do a podcast called Assorted Chocolates, which is a Black burlesque podcast. It's a great name, and they had a whole episode on jealousy, and really the use and the not benefit seems like a judgment or a stronger word, but like the value potentially of jealousy as well. But also I want to say that at some point, I forget who it was, someone pointed out to me, like, the real difference between envy and jealousy is hoping that someone's going to take something that's yours. And frankly, not a lot of us have things that are ours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, really. Yeah, especially when we're talking competitions, because not a single one of us is entitled to an immediate yeah.
Yep.
But
that's so true. There was a year at Miss Exotic World when everybody was coming up to me and saying, this is your year. So what you just said just totally reminded me that this is your year. You're going to win it. This is the year. We know it. We know it. I didn't place. Didn't even place. That was great in a lot of ways, because when I was up there on the stage when they were announcing the winners, there was this little bit of feeling like, okay, everybody's saying it's my year. But if I'm honest, when I saw the acts before me, I didn't get to see everyone because, then you're getting ready. And when I saw the acts before me, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I can beat that. Oh, I certainly can't beat that. I mean, I knew when I was up on that stage that it was that we all had a snowball's chance in hell of winning, because there were just so many great things. And when I didn't even place, I was okay with, like, I knew why. I was like, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that. Like, and so when everyone's saying, oh, this is your year, like, yeah, nothing ever belongs to you. No matter what anybody thinks, no matter what anybody says, you never know what is coming from any other angle and what other people are going to do. You just got to do your best and be ready for whatever. And then, do it because it makes you happy. Don't do it because you think it's yours, because it is not. And the minute you start thinking it's yours, I do believe in karma. I do believe there is some energy in the universe that comes in at the right moment sometimes. And if you start believing it's yours and thinking it's yours and acting like it's yours, karmic energy is going to come up in there and tell you something. And that's going to hurt like hell. So, nope, we don't own anything. Hardly. I mean, we own our own actions. That's about it.
Yeah. Well, I think we have come to multiple conclusionary statements that we could have ended on any moment, but we kept on going. Desiree, I find you. It's been wonderful. It's been absolutely wonderful. I hope to do it in person soon, when perhaps you're not running from room to room with a clipboard, making sure that everything is going smoothly. And I appreciate, thank you for being part of the facilitators. Thank you for being someone who helps bridge the gap between the historical and the contemporary. You are a necessary component for the future of this Michigas. So I really do appreciate getting to know you. We barely scratched the surface in these 2 hours, but goodness gracious, we'll reconnect at some point, and maybe I'll get you on I do a side project here called The Music That Made We. I'd love to hear your 10 songs that have shaped your life and career. So you think about that and figure that out. We'll reconnect, and we'll fill in some of the gaps that we didn't get to.
Yes.
Would you please? Yes. Would you please tell the folks who are listening the ways that they can keep in touch with your goings on?
Yes. I am on Instagram as the Desiré D'Amour. So that's a lot to spell.
I'll put it in the footnotes.
Okay, you do that. And I have a website, DesireeD'Amour.com. Of course, I'm on Facebook. Look for Desiré D'Amour. I'm also the chair of the board of the Burlesque Hall of Fame. So if you have things about the Burlesque Hall of Fame that you want to discuss, you can reach me through the website. We have a board email there. And my email is Desiree@DesireeD'Amour.com. I love to talk to people and engage with people, and I don't try to hide from people at all. So reach out in any way. If you're in Tucson especially, or if you're in Las Vegas at BHOF, I always love it when people come up and say hi and take a picture with me, because I never get any pictures with anybody. So I always put out the call, please come take a selfie with me at BHOF. Even if I never see it, just knowing that it's out there, that I existed once.
Proof of life.
Thank you so much, Viktor, for having me. Such a pleasure to speak to you. I have so much respect for you. I remember when I first heard your name and I asked Sam Samsonite who you were, and he was telling me all about you, and like I just fell in love with
also one of our best cheerleaders.
Oh my goodness.
That was one of the reasons that when the royal court was discussed, and I was like, you couldn't ask for a better spokesperson. What the hell are you talking about?
Oh my gosh, that entire court is each of them has been especially Sam. Sam is a spokesperson like no other, and he's also a professional spokesperson. So there's that. But I mean, Moscato has ushered in a inclusion and a feeling for people who felt so excluded before, by simply, bravely saying, I'm doing this. And each one of them has moved, a mountain in this community in some way. The courts just keep it. And we always say it is not a personality or community award. It's not like Miss America, where you do have to be a philanthropist and have a personality, component. It's just who did the best 4 minutes of performing.
Yeah.
That's how you get but it is starting to become, I'm starting to see people who deserve it from a community and philanthropic perspective too. And that's
I think that a lot of them do the best work. I think you can't beat that passion.
Yep. That's bingo. Yep. Yeah. So I can't wait to see you up there. And
listen, whenever y'all want me.
We're gonna talk. Thank you, my friend.
All right, darling. Please be safe. Please be well. Enjoy your jazz concert and be well. Continue to thrive. Mwah.
Thank you. Mwah. Talk to you very soon, I hope.
We Burlesque the podcast, created, developed, and edited by Viktor Devon. Podcast artwork by Logan Laveau. We Burlesque the podcast cover art photography by Atticus Stevenson. Theme song, On a 45 by This Way to the Egress, used with permission. All incidental music via Pixabay under the expectation of fair use. Please visit WeBurlesquePodcast.com for notes on this and every other episode. Follow We Burlesque and Viktor Devon on just about every platform, and support the podcast via patreon.com/WeBurlesque. Don't got the cash? Please follow, subscribe, and give 5 stars on every platform you can get your hands on. It really does help. All original material is owned by Viktor Devon and White Elephant Burlesque Corporation. All other material is property of their respective copyright. No infringement, while likely, is intended. This episode and all episodes thereafter are in memory of Lucky Charming. Miss you, friend.